Welcome to another deep dive. We're switching things up a bit this time. Um, we've got a double feature for you guys.
Oh, a double feature. Interesting.
Yeah, so we're going to be taking a look at presentations from two big names in personal development, Connie Podesta
Okay.
and Harvey Mackay. You might know Connie Podesta. She's a comedian turned therapist, and she focuses a lot on relationships.
Yeah, I've heard of her.
And then you've got Harvey Mackay, sales guru, motivational speaker, all about business.
Okay, so we've got sort of like the relationship side and the business side.
Yeah, exactly. It's going to be really interesting to compare and contrast their approaches, see what we can learn from both of them. Like Connie Podesta talks about why men hate the question, do you notice something different?
Ooh, I've always wondered about that one.
Right. And then Harvey Mackay, he's all about building your network, even having like a killer Rolodex.
Hmm. Is that still relevant in the digital age? I'm curious to hear his take on that.
I know, right? This can be fascinating. So let's start with Connie Podesta. Her presentation is called Life Would Be Easy If It Weren't for Other People.
Okay, straight to the point.
Yeah, she doesn't mess around. And right away, she redefines therapy in a way that really struck me. She says it's not about placing blame, right? It's about admitting that we don't have all the answers
Interesting.
and then using resources and knowledge to help us grow. So it's
Yeah.
about taking responsibility, I think.
Yeah, owning your own journey, so to speak.
Exactly. And what's fascinating is how she connects this to the way we choose partners.
Okay, how so?
Well, she says that a lot of times we're drawn to people who kind of embody our own weaknesses.
Now, why would we do that? That seems kind of counterintuitive, right?
I know. Right. It's like, why would you want to be with someone who constantly reminds you of the things you're trying to work on?
Maybe it's a subconscious thing, like we're trying to see ourselves reflected back in the other person so we can address those weaknesses head on.
That's a really interesting thought. Maybe it's like we're trying to work through those issues by seeing them play out in someone else.
Or maybe we see it as an opportunity for growth, even if it comes with a bit of frustration.
And speaking of frustration, she tells this hilarious story about the whole food next exit scenario.
Oh, yeah, that's a classic. The guy's starving, they pass a sign that says food next exit, and instead of just saying, hey, I'm hungry, let's stop.
The woman asks, honey, are you hungry?
Right, and the guy's like, no, I'm good, because he's thinking literally.
Exactly. And the woman's sitting there fuming like, how could he not know I want to stop? It's a perfect example of that communication gap between men and women that she talks about.
Yeah, men tend to be more direct, while women might use questions or hints to express their needs.
And it leads to so much misunderstanding. So Podesta's advice for women is be direct. Don't expect your partner to be a mind reader.
Just come right out and say what you need.
Exactly. It all comes back to choice. We can choose how we communicate, how we respond, and ultimately whether we stay in a relationship or not.
It's about taking ownership of your experience.
Absolutely. And then she moves on to this topic that I think everyone can relate to, difficult people.
Oh, we all know a few of those.
Right. She says these are basically actors using either hurt or anger tactics to try and get what they want.
Okay, so what does she mean by hurt tactics?
She describes them as the types who are constantly playing the victim, whining, complaining, always sick.
Oh, I know exactly the type.
Right. And it's all designed to make you feel guilty, to manipulate you into giving them what they want. And then she makes this fascinating connection between unexpressed emotions and physical ailments.
You mean like when people say they have a headache because they're stressed out?
Yeah.
Yeah.
She suggests that sometimes physical symptoms can be a manifestation of emotional pain or a way of seeking attention.
That's definitely an interesting perspective. It makes you wonder how much of our physical health is tied to our emotional well-being.
And then there's the anger types. They use intimidation, aggression, and they have no boundaries.
Those are the folks who just bulldoze over everyone else, right?
Exactly. They try to control others through fear and force. Podesta's advice for dealing with these folks: recognize their act, don't take it personally, and set firm boundaries.
So don't get sucked into their drama.
Right. And finally, she reveals her big secret to wealth, success, and happiness.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What's the magic formula?
Well, it's actually pretty simple. Align your work and your personal life with your values and your passions.
So basically, do what you love and what feels meaningful.
That's it. She poses these two powerful questions. Is this what you want to be doing with your life? And is this where you want to sleep at night?
Wow, those are pretty profound questions when you really think about them. They really make you evaluate if you're living in alignment with your true self.
And she makes this really important point that people often leave jobs and relationships not because of money or lack of attraction, but because it just doesn't feel good.
Yeah, there's no sense of fulfillment.
Exactly. It's like there's this emptiness, a lack of alignment with what
Yeah.
truly matters to them.
So it's not just about external success, it's about finding that internal sense of purpose and joy.
Absolutely. Okay, so are we ready to switch gears a little bit and dive into the world of Harvey Mackay?
Bring on the sales guru. I'm curious to see how his approach differs from Podesta's.
Right, well, his presentation is called Outsell, Outmanage, Outmotivate, and Outnegotiate Your Competition. So you know he's all about taking charge and achieving results.
That sounds intense.
It is. He starts off with a story about the legendary football coach Lou Holtz. You know, he took over the University of Minnesota football program when it was really struggling.
Yeah, I remember hearing about that.
And right away, he set this standard of excellence for everyone involved, not just the players, but the coaches, the staff, even the popcorn vendors.
That's interesting. It's like he was creating a culture of excellence that permeated the whole organization.
And that's a big part of McKay's philosophy. It's about taking personal responsibility, not just relying on talent, but being dedicated, working hard, and always exceeding expectations.
So it's about pushing yourself beyond your comfort zone, striving to be the best you can be.
Exactly. And then he talks about how important it is to be adaptable, especially in today's world where everything is changing so fast. He drops this crazy statistic. Only 75 companies from the 1958 S&P 500 list are still around today.
Wow, that's mind-blowing. It really highlights how quickly things can change and how important it is to be able to adapt and evolve.
Right. If you cling to old ways of doing things, you're going to get left behind. He says you need to be agile, innovative, and always looking ahead to stay relevant. And to illustrate the importance of building a strong network, he uses this phrase, dig your well before you're thirsty.
I like that. It means building relationships and connections before you actually need them.
Exactly. He attributes a lot of his success to his network, and he encourages people to cultivate strong relationships, even with people they might not see an immediate use for.
But now, this is where I get a little skeptical. He talks a lot about his Rolodex, which is obviously a very old school approach to networking. Is that really relevant in the digital age?
That's a really good question. I mean, he was meticulous about keeping track of his contacts, sending handwritten notes, following up regularly. It makes you wonder if we've lost something in the shift to online networking.
Yeah, has the ease of connecting online made us less intentional about building real, meaningful relationships?
It's something to think about for sure, and it leads into his next big point. People skills are absolutely essential. His famous saying is, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
So it's not just about what you can do for someone, it's about showing genuine interest and empathy.
Right. He tells this amazing story about how he sent a signed hockey stick to a client whose son had been injured in an accident. It was just a small gesture of kindness, but it ended up leading to a $10 million business deal.
Wow, that's incredible. It really shows the power of human connection and how small acts of caring can have a huge impact.
Exactly. He believed in building genuine relationships, not just closing deals. And to really understand his clients, he developed this 66-question customer profile.
66 questions, that's a lot. What kind of things did he ask?
It went way beyond the basics, like their name and contact information.
Yeah.
He wanted to know about their values, their passions, their motivations. He wanted to understand what made them tick as human beings.
That's amazing. It's like he was treating each client as a unique individual and not just a transaction.
Exactly. It's a really fascinating approach, and it makes you wonder if we could apply those same principles to other areas of our lives.
You mean like in our personal relationships?
Yeah. Imagine if we approached our loved ones with that same level of curiosity and intention. What could we learn about them? How could we deepen those connections?
That's a really thought-provoking idea. It's about going beyond the surface level and really trying to understand the people who are important to us.
I think that's a great place to pause for now. We've covered a lot of ground with Connie Podesta, and we've just scratched the surface of Harvey Mackay's world. We'll pick back up with his story and insights in part 2 of this deep dive.
I'm looking forward to it.
You know, it's funny. We were just talking about Mackay's approach to really understanding his clients, and now we're going to hear a story that reveals a lot about him on a personal level. He actually opens up about his battle with prostate cancer.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it must have been a really challenging time for him.
Definitely. He was running marathons, you know, feeling like he's at the top of his game, and then suddenly he gets this diagnosis.
It's a good reminder that these things can happen to anyone, even when you think you're healthy and invincible.
It really is. And it adds this whole other layer to his message, you know.
Yeah.
He talks about the importance of really listening to your body and being proactive about your health. He even specifically encourages men over 45 to get screened for prostate cancer.
Especially if they have a family history, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it ties back to his whole philosophy of taking charge, right? Being in control. He even compares neglecting your health to neglecting the foundation of your business.
If you don't have a solid base, everything else is going to crumble.
I like that analogy. And it leads into his definition of character, which I found really powerful. He says character is how we act when things are tough, not just when they're easy.
So it's about digging deep and finding that inner strength to persevere.
Exactly. And he really emphasizes a positive attitude, that can-do spirit, even when you're facing adversity,
He believes that resilience is essential for achieving long-term success.
both personally and professionally. And it's interesting how both Podesta and McKay, despite their different styles, they both emphasize this sense of personal agency.
We might not be able to control everything that happens to us, but we can choose how we respond.
Absolutely. And speaking of choosing how we respond, McKay tells this great story about a busboy who was in charge of the butter at a restaurant.
Okay, a butter story. I'm intrigued.
So the story goes that Bill Bradley, the famous basketball player and senator, he goes to this restaurant and asks for an extra pat of butter.
Oh, no. I have a feeling I know where this is going.
And the busboy tells him, 1 pat of butter per customer, sir.
Oh, boy.
And Bradley, he tries to pull rank. He's like, don't you know who I am? I'm Bill Bradley. And then he lists off all his accomplishments.
I'm sure that went over well.
But the busboy is unfazed. He calmly replies, those are very impressive credentials, Mr. Bradley, but don't you know who I am? I'm the man in charge of the butter.
What a great comeback. I love that.
McKay uses this story to highlight the importance of humility and treating everyone with respect.
Yeah, we should all strive to be in charge of our own butter, so to speak.
Exactly. Recognizing that everyone has their own area of expertise and responsibility.
It's a good reminder that true success isn't just about reaching the top, but it's also about how we treat others along the way.
And to wrap things up, McKay encourages people to bring back some fun and creativity into their lives and their businesses.
So it's not just about being competent, but also being engaging and memorable.
Right. He wants people to find that spark, that passion that makes them stand out.
But it reminds me of what Podesta was saying about aligning your work with your values,
Yeah.
When you're genuinely excited about what you're doing, it shows.
He even tells this funny story about a college student who writes this dramatic letter home to her parents. It's full of white lies and exaggerations, just to soften the blow of getting bad grades in chemistry and French.
Oh, that's classic. We've all been there trying to sugarcoat bad news.
It's a reminder to not take ourselves too seriously. So we've covered a lot of ground with both Podesta and McKay. What are some of the key takeaways that stand out to you?
Well, one thing that really strikes me is how both of their messages come back to this idea of personal responsibility. Podesta talks about owning our choices in relationships, and McKay focuses on taking charge of our circumstances and building a strong foundation for success.
I agree. And they both acknowledge the importance of human connection,
Right.
whether it's building deep personal relationships or cultivating a network of support.
And they both advocate for a proactive approach to life. Podesta encourages us to be assertive in our communication, and McKay emphasizes the importance of planning ahead and always striving to improve.
They both seem to believe that a positive attitude can make all the difference. Now, before we move on to our final takeaways and a challenge for our listeners, do you have any other thoughts or questions that have come up for you during this deep dive?
So, as we're thinking about both Podesta and McKay's presentations, one thing that keeps coming back to me is this idea of choice.
Choice.
Yeah, like Podesta talks about how we choose our partners and how we choose to act in those relationships.
Right, and McKay talks about building your network even when you don't think you need it.
Exactly. And he talks about choosing a positive attitude even when things are tough.
So it's like we're not just victims of our circumstances.
Yeah, we have agency.
Both of them seem to really believe that. And I think one of the most powerful parts of Podesta's presentation was when she asked those two questions. Is this what you want to be doing with your life? And is this where you want to sleep at night?
Oh, yeah. Those questions really make you stop and think.
They do. It makes you wonder if you're actually living in line with your values.
Right. Are you just going through the motions, or are you truly fulfilled?
And she makes the point that if you're not living in alignment with your values, it creates this dissonance.
And it affects everything you do.
Exactly. Your relationships, your work, your health.
You can't really escape it.
So for you, our listener, the big question here is, what choices are you making in your life? The ones that are moving you toward your goals and the ones that might be holding you back.
That's a tough question, you know. It requires some real self-reflection.
It does. And there's no right or wrong answer. It's about taking an honest look at yourself and your life,
And figuring out what truly matters to you.
and then making choices that align with those values.
And it's never too late to make a change, right?
Absolutely. If something's not working, whether it's a job or a relationship or even just a bad habit,
You have the power to choose something different.
you're not stuck. So before we wrap up, we wanted to leave you with one final thought.
Okay, shoot.
Remember how McKay had that 66-question customer profile?
Oh yeah, he really went deep trying to understand his clients.
What if we took that same approach with our personal relationships?
That's interesting.
Like, what if we really tried to understand our loved ones and friends on that deeper level?
So instead of just scratching the surface,
Yeah, we could ask about their passions, their motivations, their experiences.
it would definitely lead to some really interesting conversations.
And it could help us build stronger, more meaningful connections.
I like that. It's about approaching those relationships with curiosity and a genuine desire to connect.
Well said. So that's it for our deep dive into the wisdom of Connie Podesta and Harvey McKay. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep diving deep.